Hi, I'm Josh McGrath.
I'm Andrew Haas.
And this is the Art in Pursuit podcast. Welcome back. My favorite comment from this past week is from user @Blake_BK_. And he says, quote, I kind of understand what he's saying, but at the same time, it just sounds like another weak man in a pink shirt that has never done anything hard trying to seem superior to others, end quote. And, you know, Blake, you got me. I am actually quite weak. I have not been to the gym in at least 3 or 4 years.
He called you out.
He called me out. And with the end of the year coming up, I'm feeling convicted, like probably I should get a gym membership starting January 1st. Mm-hmm. And you know what? On the form, when they ask, why are you signing up for a gym membership? I'm going to put Blake's name down.
I wear pink shirts.
I wear pink shirts, and it's obvious that my biceps are itty bitty in my pink shirt, and I got to stop doing that. I got to start wearing long sleeve shirts, probably a hoodie. Sweater would be ideal on the show from here on out, until such a point as my biceps are intimidating to Blake.
So I've noticed that only men are commenting on your shirts.
That does seem a little weird. Since we've launched, it appears that only men are interested in what I'm wearing. I don't feel like I'm really being seen by the women on the podcast.
It's like we only have men listening or something.
You know, it seems like our target demographic that we intended to reach are the people that are listening.
Well,
which makes it very hard if you're looking. Now I'm not. They may be, but I'm not. So all that to say, I would appreciate if people would begin. I don't care if you're a man or a woman. Let's be more interested than just the shirts.
Yes.
Let's be interested in the pants. Let's be interested in my shoes, my socks, the cool shoelaces I have. Maybe from here on out we shoot in black and white so people can't get angry about the color of my shirt.
it's a stumbling block.
It is. And clearly, you know, I decided to wear a floral shirt again, which as we know from last week's comment, that was also a problem.
Yeah. There's a lot of pink in that shirt.
There is a lot. I should just stop wearing clothes. No, that's actually a bad idea. Particularly since I haven't been going to the gym. Ain't nobody want to see that.
Oh, man. Wow. All right. Quick reminder, we have these amazing custom leather coasters, and we would love to give them away.
Yes, and to be eligible, all you have to do is share one of our social media posts, tag us, Ardent Pursuit, as well as 3 friends. And then every week we will draw a name at random, and then we'll contact you via DM to get your address, and we will ship this to you. And yeah, these coasters would make a great Christmas gift. So today we want to start off by playing an interesting video that we discovered a couple weeks ago that we've been kind of sitting on. That I think will be very interesting for those of you who have not seen it. It's a woman, looks like she's probably in her early, maybe mid-30s. She's kind of having a roundtable discussion, and she just begins talking about the culture that we live in today that sets women up to have to work as opposed to getting married. And she just kind of shares some of her thoughts. And so let's hit play here.
I would love to be a stay-at-home mom. I would love to be a homemaker and a wife. I would love to be able to live on a homestead and go milk my cow and take the eggs out of the chicken coop and have one baby in the belly and on my hip and another toddler coming behind me. That's like my dream, but I can't do that because the way the economy is set up is I'm forced to work. I'm forced to get an education, a higher education, a college degree in order to make enough money that I can be financially independent and afford my own home or my own rent or my own gas or my own groceries, my own insurance. And it's extremely difficult to do that. And it's very isolating as a woman when you have to do all of that all on your own, and you can't find somebody that you can outsource some of those chores and financial responsibilities like you would with a spouse. So no, being a single working woman absolutely sucks. It's the worst thing ever. I hate it. I would go back to the 1950s in a second just so I wouldn't have to deal with this.
You're talking about a traditional nuclear family where the woman doesn't work in a married household with kids.
And statistically, that was the case.
You're a single woman who isn't married with kids yet.
So I'm for it because of the way it is. Most women were married by the age of 21 up until the 1970s.
I think it's a woman's choice. Before that, it was societally encouraged to marry young.
Yeah, and it was better for women mental health-wise long-term to be able to go into that long-term committed relationship and have the established family instead of being forced to slave away for a corporation that doesn't like you, doesn't care about you, makes you sit under fluorescent lights for 8, 9, 10 hours a day. You get a lunch break, you get health insurance, but do you have somebody who loves you staring at you every day like your child? No, it's horrible.
Wow. So there's a lot that she's covering, a lot of different ideas that could be unpacked. What are your initial thoughts?
So while she doesn't speak for all women, she does speak for a lot of women. And I think there's something under the surface that she's trying to identify there. And culturally, we really struggle to articulate what that is. And we get bits and pieces here and there, and I think she did a great job of trying to articulate some of the frustrations and struggles that a lot of women feel.
We live in a culture today where, by and large, women are looked down upon who want to pursue marriage, who want to be stay-at-home wives or mothers, who want to have children, kind of the trad wife, trend that's happening. It's that really is a rebuff to the feminist modern culture agenda that tells women they should not find fulfillment, they should not find value, they should not find purpose in being a wife and being a mother, at staying home. And one of the things that this woman really articulates very well is the fact that the economy, and broadly speaking, society as a whole, over the last 60, 70 years, has set up a precedent where women from high school on essentially have to enter the labor force, be independent, pursue a career, and not pursue marriage, not pursue being a mother, and to find fulfillment, value, and contentment in what arguably has been historically a very masculine environment.
And somehow, certain pursuits that a woman could choose are deemed less valuable or less productive than others. And there's a saying, he who asks the question wins the argument. And the lady there tries to frame it as this woman doesn't want to work, or women shouldn't work. And that's a shallow, short-sighted version of even what work is.
Sure.
She's obviously speaking toward working for a paycheck, which nothing wrong with that, but that's not the definition of work. Women often put in a lot of work toward a lot of things that don't result in a paycheck. And I think it's worth highlighting that.
So let's talk about where we are, in 2024, where culturally we've set women up to be career-driven, to want to pursue success, to want to pursue that paycheck, to want to pursue that influence in the work space, in the labor force. And we've seen, historic gains of women being very successful across the board culturally. There have been some real gains, on the managerial level, and some real strides in the executive level. But I guess my question is, does this actually bring fulfillment, contentment? Does it bring purpose to the vast majority of women? And are there any downsides to a culture that kind of ushers women into a historically masculine environment like the workforce?
It certainly could bring fulfillment, but I would say it's despite of and not because of the work culture that's been established. And let's keep in mind, historically, the work culture that we have has been driven and dominated by masculine pursuits, ideals, thoughts. The whole culture is really driven by and shaped around what a man values, what a man is good at.
And how two men oftentimes interact.
Yes.
Very decisive, maybe intense, pursuing a lot of logic, really kind of devoid of emotion in the thinking process, very much driven by maybe a bottom line.
So on one hand, we're asking women to enter into a culture that's been established by men, predominantly driven by masculine ideals. That's okay, but on the flip side, we also want women to operate with a feminine approach, and that is just setting them up for failure.
I think that's important to note because it's not a problem that women are entering the workforce. We've gained a lot of great things as a result. However, to succeed in the workforce environment, you have to adopt a lot of masculine traits. And it's not because of the quote unquote the patriarchy, which is, what culture or feminists will blame kind of the masculine energy ideals and motivations on. It's actually because the way that work gets done, and we've talked about this from early on, the way that culture has continued to exist for thousands of years is by that masculine drive, by those masculine traits, by that masculine perspective. That's how businesses start from a garage and become a multi-billion-dollar business. Again, it's not to say that the masculine trait is better than the feminine trait. But what it does mean is that for women who are really encouraged and ushered, funneled into the corporate work world, they're naturally, even subconsciously, going to adopt a lot of masculine traits, adopt masculine energy in order to succeed. And what oftentimes happens is they will claim that as them simply being confident and oh, well, men are intimidated by a confident woman. And it's not that men are intimidated by and large, by confident women. Men are just not attracted to a woman who exudes masculine energy. That's just something that is weird because I know how to engage in a masculine, driven, logical. We can argue, we can compete, we can even fight, and then we can walk out being friends. Environment. I don't know how to do that with a woman.
Now, confidence should follow competence.
Yeah.
Not always, but it should. Now, there are big problems if you're confident without competence.
Oh, I mean, that you've got a mess right there. At that point, just go into politics.
Yes. And the confidence that women have as a result of their competence is a good thing in the workplace. It's needed there. The problem is that's really the only place it's truly beneficial, and outside of that, it often is uninteresting to men.
That's actually really interesting because we have a generation of women who have been in the workforce for, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And many of them are single. And they're looking out at society and saying, where are the good men? And they're frustrated. And again, I'm not speaking to women as a whole. Women are not a monolith. But I think what's very fascinating about what you just touched on is that for many women, they are successful in their career endeavors, which is great, good for them. And the energy, the orientation, the pursuit, the confidence that is all needed in the workplace, is brought over into their personal life. And it ends up being this, well, I don't need a man. I'm a strong, confident woman. I don't need no provider. I don't need no protector. I don't need no partner. And that's really the vibe they give off, or that's what they explicitly communicate. And then they're like, well, where are all the strong men? Where are all the alpha men who are going to pursue me and approach me? And as a man, one of the things that's not interesting is a woman who says, I don't need you. As a man, what's not interesting is a woman who says, I don't need you to protect me or to provide for me. What's not interesting to me is a masculine energy type woman because I already have the masculine energy. I don't need you to bring that to a relationship. And unfortunately, so many women have bought into the lie that their masculine energy that they bring into the relational environment is just, quote, confidence. And I'm like, but it isn't. Every man should hopefully want a confident, competent, hardworking woman. And so if culturally for decades we've encouraged women to go into the workforce to be successful, and by nature of that they are going to adopt a lot of masculine energy, a lot of masculine traits, a lot of maybe even masculine perspectives that are needed for their success in the workforce, but they carry that over into their personal relationships, they carry that over into their personal life. When a woman is interested in being pursued, when a woman is interested in being married, when a woman is interested in finding love so that she can start a family, we need to examine maybe why it's so difficult for her in light of earlier decisions that were made. Because it's very possible where she is right now is a result to just buying into a cultural ideology, into cultural pressure to do something that is causing her actually to maybe be less attractive to potential mates.
So we're not saying that it's problematic for women to be in the workforce. What we need to be clear on is that if you have two people pursuing careers who then decide to pursue a relationship, it often can be more challenging than if just the man were pursuing a career.
And today, culture says women and men are the same. They're identical. There's no difference between them. And if that were actually true, then women would be fine and content with a man pursuing them who doesn't have the same financial status or higher, who doesn't have the same educational level or higher, or who doesn't have the same social standing as them. Mm-hmm. But that's not what we see. That's not what women, by and large, are willing to accept or want. And so what we end up with is this kind of terrible, cycle where as women become more successful, as they become more career-oriented, the percentage of men that they will entertain to pursue them, that percentage grows smaller and smaller and smaller. And so today now you have all these, very successful women in their, 30s, 40s, and 50s who can't, quote, find true love because the only type of man they're willing to entertain is one who is above their financial status or above their educational status or above their social status. And that becomes very, very hard to find.
Side note, but who started this idea that men and women are the same and can pursue the same things to the same level?
Yeah.
What happened to being different? Why did that become unfashionable?
Come on. Complementarianism. Mm-hmm. That's a charged world within the evangelical kind of Christian space, which it shouldn't be. Because guess what? Men and women are different. Oh, YouTube's going to cancel us now. But men aren't looking for women that are like them.
Right. And to that lady in the video that we just watched, she makes a good point of, why can't I offload some responsibilities to someone? And what she's really pointing to is, what if I work at the things I'm good at, and he works at the things he's good at, and together we're greater than the sum of the parts? And I think that's what a relationship is. And I mean, that's any organization. That's what companies are built on. People working in their skills and competencies to make the whole better off. And somehow that's gotten lost relationally, where the guy can work in his strengths, the woman can work toward her strengths. They can be separate and different, and that's good. And together, as a whole, they're actually better off. So a man pursuing a career often makes him more interesting to women because of the career he pursues. Mm-hmm. On the flip side, a woman pursuing a career does not naturally, inherently make her more interesting to men. Not because of the career itself, but because there's an opportunity cost. Effort and energy put toward a career just means that effort and energy are not put toward something else.
I think that's an important point to note because, for a man who's successful in his career, whatever his career may be, and success, again, is kind of arbitrary. Mm-hmm. But what it points to is a man who's, goal-oriented, who's driven, who's got vision, who, probably is more financially stable. Mm-hmm. And that is, by and large, very attractive to the vast majority of women out there. They're looking for a provider. They're looking for a protector. They're looking for a man who has vision, who has purpose, who has drive. They're looking for that kind of partner in their life. Mm-hmm. For men, though, the thing that women find attractive isn't necessarily the thing men are going to find attractive in women. And because of the cultural push for women to enter the workforce and then just inherently adopt a lot of masculine values, a lot of masculine traits, a lot of masculine energy, maybe many women are thinking, well, now I'm more attractive, I'm more eligible for a man to pursue me. But like you said, it comes at an opportunity cost because you've now adopted certain things that are translated in a relational context that most men aren't going to find attractive. And so it's really important for our listeners just to be aware that this is a reality. We're not saying one thing is inherently wrong or one thing's inherently good. Mm-hmm. But you've got to understand that every action has an opposite and equal reaction. And you got to understand there are downstream effects of the decisions that you make.
Yes, so culture sets up this dual income mindset where that's the highest ideal, that's the best outcome. Mm-hmm. Anything less than that is suboptimal, but we want to really challenge that.
Yeah, because it's not necessary that you have two incomes.
Right.
One of the things that results from this career-driven, a success-oriented culture is the fact that we end up creating a lifestyle that is dependent upon a certain income threshold. But the reality is, for the vast majority of all of human history, you needed very little money to live off of. And so today people are saying, well, I could never get married, I could never have kids because how would I put them in private school, or how would I put them in daycare, or how would I afford the Mercedes SUV? How would I afford the nanny? It's so expensive. How am I going to buy 100% all organic groceries? I can't do this. It's impossible. Therefore, I can't have family. Therefore, I can't get married. Therefore, I'll just continue in my lifestyle of being career oriented, success driven.
And women should actually be given the freedom to pursue something beyond the narrow definition of what culture calls success.
Exactly. And they actually are free to pursue other things. They, unfortunately, oftentimes believe the lie that they don't. Go back to the woman in that opening video. She has bought into a false premise that she has to have the career. She has to, make all the money in order to eventually have the marriage, eventually have the family. And the reality is she's starting from a false premise. Women are able to pursue marriage. They are able to pursue being a mother. Now, it doesn't mean that that's going to be easy. It doesn't mean that other decisions aren't without their challenges. Of course they are. But every decision has its own unique set of challenges. And so for the woman who, is in the career, who is pursuing, success, financially, that will limit likely the options available to her when it comes to things like marriage and family.
And there's been a failure in men to value the work that women do that does not involve a paycheck.
Talk to me more about that. Unpack that idea.
So, culturally, we've come to define work and value through what we're paid. And that's an easy equation.
Sure.
And the free markets are good at figuring that out. The problem is that's a very tiny slice of the pie. There is a whole rest of life that doesn't involve the 9 to 5. And the problem is that women who put their effort and energy towards something that doesn't result in a paycheck, men categorically have pretty much said that's not of much value.
So we're talking historically here. What kind of led to the genesis of the early feminist movement was this idea that women weren't being valued, that they didn't have an equal voice, that they were kind of on the outskirts of society, social life, and, kind of even the home, seen but not heard. And men failed in dramatic fashion to value, to love, to care, to communicate the important worth of their wives, the important worth of, the role of motherhood. And we know this, that, mothers are really the bedrock of the family. Sadly today, we see a huge rise of single motherhood. But again, who's there? The mother.
It's been said that a man can build a house and a woman can turn it into a home. And it's easy to see the immediate value in providing shelter, protection from the elements. It's easy to see the immediate benefit. That is something that men are generally good at. Turning it into a home is a lot more nuanced, much harder to assign value to. But a house that's a home is so valuable, but also really hard to put a price tag on. And I think that's the culturally, we just have completely failed in that regard. We value the things that men are generally good at because they're easy to quantify and easy to value. And the things that women are generally good at, it's harder to put a value on it. So we've kind of just you know what, can't be done, so we're not gonna do it.
And sadly, because women weren't valued at home, they turned to the workplace to find value and purpose via a career, promotions, and a paycheck. And the same culture that has told women to not lean into their feminine energy, to lean into their feminine instincts, to not lean into being a mother or a wife, is the same culture that tells men they should not value those things in a woman and they should not be a masculine man. That they need to be the type of man that, uplifts his woman, that supports her career, that is pushing her onward, that is, coming under her vision, that is encouraging her in her endeavors. And it's like, well, obviously, yes, in any healthy relationship, hopefully a man is doing that for his woman, for his wife, absolutely. But what you don't want to do is be a man that becomes a beta male that basically castrates his masculinity in order to appease a masculinized woman who's adopted the masculine traits from culture because of her place in the workforce, and think that somehow that's going to lead towards, a flourishing marriage. Because the reality is, for the vast majority of men, they are looking for something that is different than them.
And something the lady in the first video touched on was this idea of being dependent on someone else. And I think we've lost this openness and willingness to walk that path. We champion and we value self-sufficiency, independence. Those can be good things, but they have their natural limits. And so when people are choosing to enter into a relationship, there needs to be an openness and a willingness to let go on some level or be vulnerable or even be reliant and dependent on somebody else.
One of the things that I think that we've lost in today's culture because of the messages that we're inundated with that say men and women are exactly the same, there's no difference between women and men, is the fact that we actually are different. There is a difference on so many levels, and that difference is so beautiful. But instead of embracing that difference, those differences are actually in conflict with one another. Now, go with me for a second because I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat.
Oh boy.
I think that social media has contributed in exponential ways to the decline of romantic relationships by utilizing the algorithm, showing only certain videos to women and only certain videos to men that further an unhealthy perspective on the other gender. So, for instance, men will oftentimes see videos of women on the internet who are, they're the plastic, low-thinking, shallow women. There are a very small minority of the women out there who are talking about how if he doesn't make, six figures, how if he's not 6'5", if he hasn't dealt with all of his toxic masculinity, i.e. masculinity, that if he isn't supportive of you, if he doesn't have his life in order, the list goes on and on and on and on. The icks of being like a nice guy, being, a provider, of caring for her, all those things that like healthy, normal women would never say. The social media algorithm is going to show men this over and over and over again. And when you hear that, when you see that, when you listen to that, it's easy to project that now on all women. And then for women, they will oftentimes also see voices, generally other women, talking about how you should not allow any man into your life to pursue you unless he's making six figures, unless he's 6'5", unless he's dealt with his toxic masculinity, i.e. has no masculinity, unless he's like supports you, girl power, unless he's like all behind your dreams, unless he's the beta male of your dreams. And so then women begin to look at men around them who maybe are walking in their masculinity, who are saying, hey, I'm looking for like that feminine presence, that feminine energy, that traditional woman. And they're like rejecting that because, oh, that's gross, that's terrible. And so we have, unfortunately, women and men, by and large, looking at each other through a very negative lens and projecting unhealthy, unrealistic expectations on the entire other gender. Not just an individual, the entire other gender. And as a result, like two ships passing the night, we've got angry, bitter, unhappy, resentful, depressed men. And then we have angry, bitter, resentful, depressed women who are unable to find a relationship that's going to lead towards a flourishing marriage.
So what you're saying is stay off of social media.
Oh, definitely. Unless you're following us.
Well, exactly.
Of course.
And I think that's an interesting point where it might be a self-selecting group. You know, the people that are generally on social media might not be the quality men and women that someone might desire to pursue a relationship with. But also, it would probably do people well if they're interested in pursuing somebody to just, you know, step back and think of the bigger picture. Think of where your time and energy and effort is directed. Are you spending a lot of time? And, you know, we've covered this before. Are you spending a lot of time in that environment? You know, are you being fed this? You know, is your feed full of these types of things that you're describing? And for people who are serious about doing a relationship well, I would suggest you would greatly benefit from either scaling back or eliminating social media.
Now, we're getting to the end of the episode here, and I think it's important that we discuss the fact that for men, I think that it's important for them to know that it's okay to want, you know, a trad wife, you know, a traditional wife, a woman who leans into her femininity, a woman who wants to be a wife, a woman who wants to be a mother. That's okay. Society, culture will tell you that's wrong. And, you know, for women, I think it's important for them to know that it's okay for them to want to pursue that. The woman in the opening video, what she's describing is wanting to be a trad wife. She's describing wanting to be able to pursue that and have that as an end goal, but feeling like it's impossible for her because of, you know, quote, the way the economy's set up. And so we want to give people permission to go against the current of culture and to recognize that it's fine to want those things. Those are good things.
And I think the challenge for women here, it's a tall order, but they really have the cards stacked against them because culture has come to a place where the easy path, the expected path for them is a more traditional path where you pursue an education and a career. Again, those aren't bad things, but to deviate from that at all is either hard to do or frowned upon. And, you know, we sit here on the podcast like we got all the answers, which we sometimes do.
Sometimes we do.
But life is often nuanced, complicated, confusing. And so the challenge for men and women is to really walk this out. And specifically, to the young men, the challenge for you would be purpose to orient your life and your work toward giving a woman the opportunity to pursue what she wants to pursue. If that is a career, great. If that's something else, orient your work and your life in a way that that's possible.
That's a great thought. And while we could unpack that as its own episode, I think it's a great place to conclude. So 3 things. One, for all of our listeners, it's important to recognize that our decisions have consequences and downstream effects. So if you find yourself in a position where you're frustrated with your current circumstance, you know, relationally, look at some of the decisions you've made and consider whether or not changes are needed. Now, for men specifically, it's okay to, you know, be a masculine man and to want a traditional wife. Don't let culture or society pressure you into believing that you need to change as a man because masculinity is bad, or that you shouldn't want to find a traditional valued woman, all right? Those are okay. And then for women, it's okay to want to be a traditional wife. It's okay to want to pursue that. While culture, society, feminism in particular, will tell you that there's not value or worth in that, there actually is. And if you find value and worth in that, that's okay. Don't let society determine for you where your value and worth comes from. Obviously, this is a bit of a controversial topic. There's a lot more that could be unpacked. Obviously, we don't have all the answers. At least we haven't said them all. So, you know, absolutely, we'd love to hear your feedback. We'd love to hear your comments. You can send us an email at contact@ardentpursuit.fm or leave a comment on any of our social media. As always, we love having you here, and we look forward to having you here next time.